Good morning, JCPS. It is Thursday, and it is fitting that we have social studies, middle school social studies today for the virtual learning option for JCPS. And I am joined by Ryan New, the JCPS social studies lead, and Vincent Tinker and Rebecca Ingram, also on the JCPS social studies team. Jack Bosley, my partner, on the digital innovation team, and Imali Kent of DBQ, who will be talking the lion's share today about DBQ. So we are very excited to have those folks on today. So good morning, and thank you for joining us. And you may post any questions you have in the chat. Please look at the links that I just posted in the chat there. We've got a great new JCPS Social Studies website that's going to be integral to what we're talking about today. So please do check that out. And without further ado, let's turn this over to Peyton Manning superfan Ryan New.
Oh, man. Well, thanks, Russ, for that. My name is Ryan New. I'm the instructional lead for social studies here at JCPS. Rebecca?
Good morning. I'm Rebecca Ingram. I'm the instructional coach for social studies.
And I'm Vincent Tinker. I'm the social studies literacy coach.
And we'll let Imali introduce herself here. Go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Imali Kent with the DBQ project. I'm part of their PD team.
Awesome. And you know the one and only Jack Bosley.
Morning, everybody. Zone 1 digital innovation leader. Happy to be part of this morning.
Excellent. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here, and we'll go ahead and get going. And as Russ said earlier, Imali's going to be able to walk us through a slight variation from CIVOS, right? So social studies is not using that as a resource across the district, and we've instead opted for a different tool. So let me get the captions on here. So this session is all about the middle school training, specifically around DBQ, document-based questions. We're just going to talk a little bit about why we have made this transition. So unlike CIVOS, our platform is going to be the website that was referenced earlier, jcpssocialstudies.com. Not only will we be able to find the virtual option, where I'll show you where that is in just a second, you'll also be able to have access to all the other resources that we provide in the social studies. If you go to our homepage, you'll notice here that at the very top, there's a section that says virtual learning. This is right next to our curriculum tab, so you'll be able to go back and forth here. But today we're going to be looking at that 6th, 7th, 8th grade area here, right, for that virtual option. If you were to click on the 6th grade, it'll take you to a page or at a landing site where you'll be able to scroll down, and this is going to be the first thing that you see. You'll notice here that one of the things that we're trying to shift to is making sure that what we provide as the virtual option really aligns to 3 major components. One is the Kentucky Academic Standards for Social Studies, passed in July of last year. We're trying to make sure that every bit of resource that we provide aligns well to those standards. The second is JCPS's racial equity policy. And the third is ultimately the Civic Mission for social studies, which is to produce great citizens. Part of our platform here is the same way that it's always been when it comes to our curriculum. The idea is that before, social studies might have been disjointed, a series of activities, but in fact, if we're going to produce better citizens who are racially conscious and that align to, and that the learning experience is also aligned to the standards, we want to make sure that the learning is being driven by larger, compelling questions that are scaffolded up by a series of supporting questions. Those compelling questions, the CQ there at the top, are answered by summative performance tasks. For us in social studies, that's in the form of arguments, whether they be visual, verbal, multimodal, you name it, right? As long as it's an argument that answers a compelling question, then we are doing right by our students. But in order to get students to be able to do the summative performance task in that form of argument, we have a series of formative performance tasks that allow them to build skill over time. An organizational task that helps students synthesize information, right, as they're building towards that question. So an organizational task might be anything from an annotating of a source to a Venn diagram to a webbing that's making connections. Ultimately, along the system, you're going to find sources and discussion so that inquiry is never done alone, that we're working together to try to find an understanding towards those questions, but we're doing it by leveraging the multiple viewpoints of the students in our class as well. And ultimately, once that you're more informed, you're able to take action. One of the very first resources that you'll find are the JCPS curated materials that Russ just linked into the chat, right? On this, you'll find a layout for sort of looking at inquiry, lesson slide templates. We just heard back, Vincent, I didn't even tell you this, but we're going to do it live. We just heard back from an elementary teacher who said, man, these are so great. Vincent was able to build those out for us. And so thank you very much for that. We've got some organizational task slides as well. And the source analysis tool that brings in disciplinary and critical literacy. We'll talk more about that later on. And then ultimately a rubric that allows us to look at how do we improve the writing of our students, the thinking of our students around criteria such as, is it accurate? Is it clear? Is it evidenced? Is it reasoned? And ultimately here, we also provide an example lesson about how do you simplify sort of an inquiry-based lesson. But there's multiple ways of approaching it. And the one that we're really going to be looking at and leveraging well today is the DBQ 6-step method. Also underneath resources for virtual learning, our own IT3 support crew has given us some digital products for social studies, as well as we've linked in from our own website, digital resources and digital PD that might be able to provide some good background for understanding how to approach inquiry, how to approach the standards, and even how to lay the foundations for an anti-racist classroom. DBQ is going to be the bulk of how we're moving towards virtual learning. And the beauty of DBQ, as we begin our partnership with them, is that all the work that teachers do this year on DBQ will be able to be carried out in the years to come. So I know one of the big concerns is that if I spend a lot of time during this NTI period, how much of that am I going to be able to pull back into the classroom when we return to a brick and mortar setting? With DBQ, it's 100% there. We've already aligned all of these, all the DBQs to the disciplinary and inquiry standards. And here you're going to be able to access DBQ through Clever. So all teachers and students will be able to use Clever to access those materials. Rebecca and Imali will be going over today, actually, the professional learning and the office hours. So they'll be coming very soon so that you guys will have the ongoing support of DBQ throughout this year. And we've also linked in the online support tutorials and open demos there as well. And we'll go over a little bit more, Imali will, about how teachers can access DBQ and pull those in to their Google Classroom. The other group that we're sort of leaning on here is the Stanford Historical Education Group, also known as Shag. Teachers will have to sign up to access Shag materials. That sign up is free. They do not spam you. In fact, I still even have, I'm still logged in under my Boyle County account. And it's basically just a way of tracking who's going to be using their materials. So teachers will sign up for Shag. They'll have to download those materials, which include PowerPoints and keys to their organizational task, student materials that have already been sort of curated and modified, and they sort of give you a script for the lesson, right? But students should not sign up on Shag, right? This is only the teacher here. And the reason why we've gone with these two groups to build out a virtual learning option is because, as you guys know, a curriculum based on new standards takes some time to build. DBQ and Shag help provide a lot of the background and materials, both curricular and instructional, that allow us to, or allow teachers to be able to see these and move immediately into the classroom with that instruction. Underneath the second section of our virtual learning option are the videos for virtual learning. So we've pulled in some videos here that are about anywhere from 12 to 16 minutes long. That's done by our team here in the district, looking at how do I read CAS for social studies? How do I prepare for state assessment? How do I scaffold inquiry-based learning? And how do I approach an inquiry-based lesson? We're hoping that these materials will help provide a good foundation. And then certainly after watching some of these, if you guys still have questions or would like Rebecca, Vince, and I to come out to your PLC to talk more about it, we're more than happy to do so. Additionally, DBQ will be providing us some materials, and we'll also be able to take what was done today and carve it up and put it onto the website so that, as IT3 says, you guys will have the power of pause to be able to look at this whenever you need to. These 3 boxes are still sort of like, we need to figure out what these are going to be, largely because we're literally creating them as we do it. It's like breaking the 4th wall here, right? That we're going to be doing this now. Finally, we've got some curated videos from the IT3 department about Google Meets and also other synchronous tools that we thought might be helpful. And you can also see here that the digital innovation leaders, right, for your different zones are linked in so that you can be able to contact them at your leisure. The third part of this is the curriculum for virtual learning. What we've done here, we've tried to be aware of KDE's assessment blueprint. We still have no word on what the assessment's going to be this year. We're still waiting to find out even what in social studies, what that field test is going to be and when it's going to be released. But ultimately, we need to understand that we're still trying to prepare our students and ourselves for this assessment. As I've marked here, the inquiry standards represent 50% of the assessment. The disciplinary standards each are weighted at 12.5%, and they're weighted equally. That means then that economics has the same weight on the assessment as history does. So we have to be aware of that, which means then that as we're building out this curriculum, what we've tried to do is condense down units so that they make sense under a supporting question, or under a compelling question, but that you'll still need to teach with the language of the standards. Just because you teach a DBQ or a Shag doesn't mean, right, even though we've aligned it to the standards, if you're not teaching with that standards language, which is ultimately going to be the language of the assessment, right, then we're really not preparing students in that same way. And ultimately, you may have to fill in gaps that are created in a chronological way. So being able to provide some context to the questions is going to be a paramount. But if you need support on that, we're more than happy to help. Finally here, once you move down to the units, you'll see that there's going to be a little drop down, right? We've tried to do this so that everything is on one page, right? Fewer clicks. Once you click on underneath, for example, and here we have the civilizations develop in the same way. Notice that this is actually unit 2 for the virtual learning option, even though it's a later unit for our traditional curriculum. Clicking underneath this, you'll be able to see how we sort of curated both the DBQ project, looking at Ashoka here, as well as Shag documents, right, under Was Ancient Athens Truly Democratic? This is just 2, by the way. There was about 7 or 8 within this unit. So don't panic and say, well, how in the world do we only look at these 2? But it is a great way of being able to cover multiple areas around the world during this time and answering the larger question, did civilizations develop in the same way? Now we've got an understanding of how these different civilizations are clashing as we're comparing them in their development. So now I'm going to turn it over to Russ, who's going to talk more about accessing DBQ and integrating with Google Classroom.
Yes, and what's great about this is you have a how-to video created by Vincent Tinker there that goes through these steps on this presentation that is linked in the chat. So, but here are some screenshots for those people who like screenshots. So to access DBQ, you're going to go to your JCPS quick links, where you will see Clever, and when you click on Clever, you'll see on the district page a red tile that says DBQ, and you can click on that DBQ, and it will take you to, it'll log you into DBQ, and so from there, what you're going to do, if it's your first time accessing DBQ, you will see a terms of use page, so you'll have to scroll down through that and review those terms of use, and then check if you accept, and then from there, you will click on Classes and Assignments. And when you click on Classes and Assignments, after you've created your class, because DBQ is a classroom type environment, so you'll create your class, and I recommend naming it the exact same as your Google Classroom class. You'll get a class code. And from there, what you'll do is you will share that DBQ class code in Google Classroom through your stream, and you kind of see that in the this screenshot here, where Jack is posted there, and it says, number 1, log into DBQ website through Clever, The class code is, there it is, YMBRX. And so kids will access DBQ through Clever. They'll type in that class code. They'll be connected in your DBQ classroom, and then they're good to go. Okay. And so now we're going to do a live demo just to kind of show you what this might look like in classroom. And so there you see, this is that Mr. Bosley Social Studies Virtual Learning option. And so Jack has posted his lesson for the week. And he's like, hi, everyone. We'll focus on the Aztecs, Incas, and Mayan empires. And he's given directions there where he's saying log into the DBQ website through Clever, through the quick links. He's posted a video, Vincent's video there, to show people and show kids how to do that. So that's very helpful, and you have access to that as well. And then you've also got a link there to the Clever login. So if your kids, if they have trouble finding that JCPS quick links, which maybe they shouldn't by now, but if they do, you can always post them that URL that takes them directly to the Clever login for JCPS as well. So, Jack, do you want to add anything here?
No, Russ, that's pretty, I guess I do. It's pretty comprehensive, what you just went over with everybody. Ryan alluded to the fact that this made the DBQ, there may be some gaps in in areas chronologically or other areas, and Google Classroom is a good place where you can go. If you need kids to watch a video or a PowerPoint, you're seeing one of those gaps. You can obviously post supplemental things in your Google Classroom that you may not be seeing with the DBQ portal if you need to do that.
And what's great is Imali's going to go over the what DBQ looks like, what the nuts bolts of DBQ looks like inside once you get into that classroom in DBQ. All right, and then down here underneath, the other option that Social Studies is using for the virtual option is Shag, which is the Stanford Historical Educational Group. Is that it, Jack? Did I say that acronym correctly? Yes, there it is, actually. Stanford History Education Group. Yeah.
Trying to get off mute, Russ.
There you go. And so, Jack, we talk about what this kind of looks like, because Shag is not a classroom type environment, correct?
That's right. That's where they're mostly, you're going to be pulling content from Shag. And Ryan, just chime in, or Vincent, Rebecca, either one, any of you all chime in. But yeah, you're going to be pulling that information off of the Shag, and you're going to need to be converting that over to make it more friendly for Google Classroom. And Russ, can you go over, I'm on the YouTube side, so there's a little bit of a delay. You may be on there, but can you go to the classwork?
Yes.
Tab?
Yes, absolutely.
And
right.
Once you get over there, what I've done is everything in Shag just downloads in a PDF format. So all I did literally was copy, I pulled over two of the primary sources and copied and paste from a PDF into a Google Doc. And that way the students and
so is that the Black Death document, a University of Paris medical report, Jack?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yep.
here it is. I'll just open it up. He's copied and pasted from Shag, and here it is. Here's this source.
Russ, I think you might need to share your screen there.
Oh, is it?
Now it's coming over on the YouTube side, Russ. You're good.
Oh, got it. Okay, my bad.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah, so that's it. It's just a little bit of, copying and pasting from Shag, but nothing earth-shattering tech-wise to get that done. And Russ, I think you and I, as part of this ongoing series and support for this, we're going to create some mini videos on how to do this, just the converting from PowerPoint to Google Slides, and just showing everybody how to copy and paste, just in case there are folks out there who need that.
Correct. And so a big distinction is when we talk about DBQ, students and teachers will be going to DBQ, correct? They'll be visiting DBQ, whereas Shag, only the teacher will be going to Shag to get resources to pull into their Google Classroom.
Yep, that's exactly it, Russ. When you're in those, however long it takes you to go through those to answer the compelling question, get the supporting questions answered. If it's a DBQ week or weeks, then you and the students are going to live in the DBQ portal. And if it's a unit that revolves mostly around Shag, then the students are primarily going to be in Google Classroom.
All right, excellent. So good, important distinction there. And so let's turn it back over to Ryan, who I think is going to introduce us to our esteemed guest, Imali.
That's right. So you guys are absolutely right on. And again, this is us leaning into this virtual option, right? So we'll eventually, right, be able to pull these options into our curriculum, right? And so who I'm going to introduce you to next, Imali, she's going to be with us hopefully this year or the next year and so on, right, as we make DBQ part of our district. So Imali, welcome to our district, and thank you so much for being able to help us out during this time.
Thanks, Ryan. All right, good morning, everybody. Let me really quickly just share my screen. Make sure you can see my deck as well as the DBQ online platform. And then I'll go ahead and get started. Russ, you can see that okay, right?
Yes, yep, I see your screen.
Perfect, okay.
Perfect.
All right. So again, as Ryan said, my name is Imali Kent. I'm part of the PD team at the DBQ project. I'll be your first line of contact at DBQ if you need any kind of support. My email address is on the slide. I also want to take a minute and share another very important email with you, email address, and that's to our tech team, our IT side. This is a direct email. If you're ever working and, something is not going right or, you see something off, email them right away. They will call you back or email you or even hop on a Zoom and help you troubleshoot that problem. So once again, for any kind of technical support, please email support@dbqproject.com. So this particular session today, the purpose of it, and Ryan mentioned this earlier, is to get you all familiar with our DBQ online platform as a tool for remote learning. I also want to make sure that you're very comfortable with our methodology, which we call our 6-step method, as knowing that and understanding that helps you understand the platform, because the platform is built around the way we design our lessons. So that's kind of what we're here for. So to achieve that, we're going to break this session into 5 mini sessions, or like 5 parts. First, we're going to make sure you are familiar with the materials that you have access to, as well as that 6-step method that I mentioned. I want to take a minute and make sure everyone can, again, log on to DBQ Online through Clever. I'll show you what the student dashboard looks like, as well as the teacher dashboard. On the teacher dashboard side, we'll spend some time making sure you know how to create your classes, how to not only create, but customize the lessons, and most importantly, provide communication, feedback to your kids when they're not with you, right? Whether they're asynchronous or synchronous. We'll spend some time planning your first DBQ lesson. I have a lesson that I've already created. I'll show you some of the modifications I made to make it work for a remote setting. And then we'll end with reiterating, again, some of the supports that you have available for your implementation. So that's kind of how our session is going to be made up or sequenced. So again, housekeeping, if you're watching this live, if you have any questions, please put that in the chat box, send it. We'll make sure we address it. And if you're watching this later, again, you have our email. You have a wonderful curriculum team who knows the platform and the methodology really well too. So please, reach out with questions. Okay, so let's start with the first part, the materials and the 6-step method. So DBQs, document-based questions. The DBQ project did not invent them, right? We've been around as a company for about 20 years, but DBQs have been around since the 80s, used by College Board for part of their AP exam. So what we've done at the DBQ project is taken something that was an assessment tool or is an assessment tool, and we made it into an instructional tool, because the skills that you do during one of these DBQs, they're quite vital. So what are those skills? And what do you do during one of these DBQ lessons? Well, you start off with a compelling question, an overarching question. You provide the students with some sources. The beautiful thing about DBQs and Shag is you don't have to go and look for those sources. The sources are already there, right? That's the hardest part when you're in the classroom, is finding the sources. So what the kids are going to do is they're going to go through those documents or the sources. They're going to start pulling evidence out. Of course, they'll corroborate. Of course, they'll critique the source and its credibility. And by the end, they're going to start developing a claim. And then they're going to finish this lesson by backing up their claim with evidence and an argument. Our end product is an essay. But of course, you can, do something else instead of that typical essay too. You can do a discussion board, you can do a flip grid, and I'll mention other ways you can modify these lessons as we go. But our traditional end product is an evidence-based argumentative essay. Okay. So as you can see, the lessons that we have, it really provides critical thinking for our students, and it aligns really well with your standards, right? That inquiry-based learning. Before we move on and look at the materials a little bit closer, I want to just share a little bit more about our mission with you, because at the DBQ project, yes, the content is essential. Literacy is vital. And again, our goal is to make sure our kids walk away from our classrooms being able to think, right? Not only do they know information, but when they tackle new information, they know how to think about it. They know how to question it. They know how to corroborate it. They know what to do with information. So just a quick little clip on our mission, and then we'll move on into the materials.
The DBQ project grew out of our observation that kids at all levels needed to be challenged and supported at the same time, and that was happening unequally, not only in our classes or in our school, but now we know nationally. It really is, in my heart, a way to accelerate the achievement of a lot of kids who need accelerating, but do it in a very concrete way.
A DBQ is a document-based question. This is an activity that has students read a series of documents, all of which shed light on a central historical question. And then once they've read and analyzed the documents, they then construct an evidence-based argumentative essay.
A textbook just gives you the answers. It doesn't require any sort of knowledge. You just read it and it's there. But in the DBQ, it requires you to actually decipher it and learn something. So there's a huge difference.
I think what defines us is that it's the clarity of the structure that we provide teachers, who in turn provide that structure to students.
What do you think?
This is very intimidating for a lot of kids. To do this open-ended thinking, maybe they need to be coached and feel some confidence.
From a teacher point of view, it's really good for those kids that kind of stand on the outside and may be having problems making the connection and analyzing the documents. They see other kids doing that, and, I can do this.
The whole subject matter becomes alive and throbbing for the student and for the others. And that enables you to get invested and to participate.
You have to go through your sources and put them in the buckets. So which one can go with the first bucket? Which one goes with the second bucket? Which one goes with the third bucket? Where you have evidence from that that matches what your reasoning is.
And you're like a detective. You're like, all right, so this happened. Wait, this happened on the other day. And you're like, you try to bring that together.
You said it earlier. What is the feeling? It would be hard to just start by just reading the sources and then just go straight into my essay. It's a lot easier to organize them and then take from that little sheet that we use bucketing and other organization techniques to then write the paper from that.
The DBQ is traditionally used in AP classes, and what the DBQ project has done is scaffold the process in order to make it accessible to a wider range of students.
There's a big push, obviously, a national push around the Common Core state standards. The DBQ project, I think, is one of the answers of how to get students to that level of thinking faster and more efficiently.
So I started with a real guided, and then, like I said, broke away some of those guides for them, and they still continue to use. They used what they've learned.
I think the most important skill or contribution that we make to a kid is confidence. We're giving all kids the opportunity to learn how to put together a presentable written piece.
The goal is to get them to be lifelong learners, to get them to be excited about learning and about discovering new information.
They feel that this activity has integrity. They feel good when they're through doing it. And I think more than anything else, that we are providing these kids with an opportunity to go on to whatever it is and know that, my goodness, at least in one important area of school, I was successful.
So again, ladies and gentlemen, equity in education, a huge, huge part of our mission. And again, that critical thinking piece, right? So let's go ahead and look at our materials next. So in that video, you saw a lot of print material. So our materials, we have our print binders and we have our digital. So this whole training will be on using our digital platform. But whenever you get back to your school site, you might see these DBQ binders at your school site. A lot of schools in your district already has them. Just know that the content in the print binders was the absolute same content on our digital platform, right? You're going to see the same documents, the same background essays. Everything's the same. The only thing different about the online platform is, of course, there's some extra tools for scaffolding, and you can use it in a remote setting. A lot of teachers actually use DBQ online in their traditional classroom too, just because there's so many more tools for differentiation as well. Again, our time together today will be spent on looking at the DBQ online platform. So when you log into your platform, which we will in a little bit, you'll notice in your library all sorts of binders. You'll see binders that say document-based questions in American history or world history, and then you'll see MiniQs. So teachers always ask, well, what's the difference between DBQs and MiniQs? The short answer is basically the length. Our original binders that we wrote are our DBQ binders, that black binder and that green binder on the screen that you see.
So I love the color coding there, Molly. It's like just reminds me of like the old school, like thinking back to my old elementary music class. Like you graduate from the red book to the green book to the whatever. So really cool color coding there, and it makes it really simple for a simple visual for teachers.
Absolutely. Like purple is always, world history. The maroon is always U.S. history. So yeah, for sure. So originally when we wrote the DBQ binders back in the day, the AP exam had a lot more documents in it. So that's why our document-based binders, our DBQ binders, which we now lovingly call mother cues, have just a lot more resources in them. It's still fantastic. You'll notice not all the scaffolds are in there. But you'll have just access to tons of documents. I think the Sugar Trade DBQ has 26 documents in it. It's a lot. Since then, we've written what we call our MiniQ binders. These are what's often used in most classrooms. These typically have between 4 to 8 documents per unit. So that's the biggest difference between the DBQs and the MiniQs. And we have MiniQs in U.S. history, world, elementary, geography, civics, econ, lit, it goes on. For our purpose, for middle school, 6th grade educators, you'll be using primarily World History Volume 1, goes nicely with Ancient Civilizations. 7th grade educators, you'll be using World History Volume 2, mostly. And then 8th grade teachers, you'll be using American History Volume 1. Again, mostly. There might be some things in other binders that you can pull from. So I just want you to make sure you know that. So let me keep talking about the materials. Something else that's really important to know, especially when you open up one of our MiniQ binders, you'll notice that every unit in that binder, and there's typically 10 to 12 units per binder, you'll notice that it's written twice. One will be labeled with a little EV and the other one will have a CV. The EV stands for enhanced version. The CV stands for clean version. And as you can see, the difference between those two versions is that the EV has text-dependent questions to help the kids analyze the documents. So you have a tool for scaffolding there. Again, some educators start off with the EV version and they try to move them towards that CV version so they don't rely on the questions as much. But again, you have a choice of which version you want to use with your kids when you're using our MiniQ binders. In the DBQ binders, you'll notice there's two versions also. One will say LV and the other will say SV. LV stands for long version, all the documents. SV is short version. So you will see a little differential there also. So again, EV and CV located in the MiniQ binder. One other thing that I want to point out before we start logging into Clever and looking at these binders actually on the online platform is that every student page that's in our resources has a matching teacher page. You're probably going, well, duh, of course, there should be, right? There should be like a teacher key. Well, our teacher page is a lot more than just a teacher key. Of course, there are answers to those supporting questions or those text-dependent questions there, but there's also skill builders, other activity ideas, and also content notes. So if you are new to the course that you're teaching, maybe you taught world history forever, and this year you're teaching American history, check out the content notes. There's fantastic information in there. Like if I had to teach an econ class tomorrow, first of all, I might cry. But second thing I would do is check out the content notes because there's just enough information in there that I can absolutely, fake it till I make it. So check out our teacher notes and the teacher side of our resources. Okay. All right. So one of the most important things I want to mention, again, is whether you're using our world history binders or our econ binders, you'll notice that 6-step method that I mentioned earlier is built into all our lessons. You're probably going, well, why do you have a 6-step method built into all your lessons? Well, part of it is that vertical alignment of skills, right? And the other part of it is there's a difference between assigning a kid's an inquiry and teaching kids how to tackle an inquiry, right? Sometimes inquiries don't always go well because the kids lack necessary skills to be successful. Sometimes kids struggle writing an argument because they don't know how to formulate an argument or even a claim. So we have our 6-step method built into all our lessons with the hope that, exposure to it over and over and over will help them internalize this process. So when they see a political cartoon in 10th grade, they won't even have to think about it because they've done this in 6th grade, 8th grade, and so on.
Imali, if I could interject here for a moment. One of the things here that's so important in what Imali's saying, right, in their 6-step method is the idea of how long it takes to become a better writer. Writing is not something that you can just sort of pick up in 1 year or even over 3 years. It's something that is an ongoing process that even adults that I know still may say that they need to work on their writing. What I'll remind is not only does this make better thinkers and citizens, it's also part of what's going to be required on the K-Prep test moving forward. That students will be given 5 sources that they've never seen before. And they're going to have to synthesize those sources to use them as evidence to construct claims. So what DBQ is providing here is foundational, not just to good thinking, good citizenship, but also aligning to the state assessment. So for the first time, we actually have a state assessment that really actually reinforces that which we want to happen in the classroom as they are the best practices for social studies.
That's a great point, Ryan. So we've just built on those writing skills over and over and over and again, right? Those vertical alignment of skills. So before we log in and look at a lesson and look at the 6-step method in action, I'm going to preview the 6-step method. We'll dig much deeper once we get on the system, but I just want to show you just the big picture of what the 6-step method looks like. So again, just a quick video of the 6-step method in action. And this particular video is going to be narrated by co-founder and co-author of the DBQ project, Chip Brady.
Hello, everybody. This is Chip Brady of the DBQ project. I'm going to take you through a 4 or 5 minute exercise where I just kind of detail the different steps in the DBQ project method. We'll use the DBQ online platform to kind of walk you through, and I'll use a MiniQ because it most clearly lays out the explicit nature of our teaching approach. We'll go into Volume 1 World History, and we will actually use the Fall of Rome DBQ. Don't worry about how to get here. That is a different screencast. In our work for the student, we'll focus on the student side. We always start with a cover page, which addresses the question here, and it gives a little bit of an overview and a list of the documents. There's a lot of work to be done on this page, but it is not officially part of the step 1 or step 2 of our process. That starts when you hit the next page, which is a hook exercise. The hooks are meant to be interactive when you're in a classroom, and anything you do remotely, you should ask kids to dialogue if they have somebody in the room or a partner who can talk about it. And they're meant to be 15 to 20 minute exercises debating a particular task or situation. In this case, we're looking at America in the 21st century, looking at things that may be a problem that might actually lead to its decline. And what we want kids to debate there is whether or not which of these is the most significant or not. And again, we want to prime their thinking as they begin to lean their historical minds on into the idea of looking at Rome. So step 1 is the hook. Step 2 is the background essay. This is building contextual background for our students who might need a little more support, and it really targets the task. These are 1 page. We do a lot of active reading and on this, and often multiple reads. If I was doing this remotely, I'd focus on the audio support, and at least one of the reads should involve the audio support. But step 2 is the background essay. That is partnered in the EV version with background essay questions, which are text-dependent questions that might help students deconstruct some of the key ideas or concepts in these particular unit. Step 3 is what we call clarifying the question and pre-bucketing. And really it's 2 parts. The first part, if you look at it here, is looking at what are the words in the question and what does it really mean? So we always ask them the same way. What is the analytical question? What terms need to be defined? And rewrite the question in your own words. In this particular DBQ, what caused the fall of Rome, we're really defining fall. And if you look at our definition here, what were the 3 reasons most caused the decline of Rome? And of these, which was primary? This is really a student's own language and how to maybe frame the question. We want them to slow down and say the question in their own words, defining key terms. We then want them to predict the categories of analysis. So in this particular case, what caused the fall of Rome? We're hinting that the documents might produce 5 different causes or reasons for the fall of Rome. And all we want right here is reason 1, reason 2, reason 3, reason 4, reason 5. They don't know what the reasons are yet, but we're getting their minds primed to look for these types of things in the document. So step 3 is pre-bucketing and clarifying the question. Step 4 are the documents, and this is the bulk of the exercise. And if you look at the drop-down menu, you can see the pages that are here. This is most of the pages in a MiniQ or a Mother Q. And in the EV version of the documents, we have questions underneath. And in the CV version of the DBQs or MiniQs, we take away those questions. That is a teacher choice, but the key here, and we won't go into different elements of document analysis, is that the kids need to dig their evidence out, taking a look at the documents, finding the different reasons that Rome fell. And once they spend their time doing that, we put them into the writing, really pre-writing phase. And step 5 of our process is bucketing. And bucketing, we actually have 2 things going on here. We want students to actually identify maybe reasons for the fall of Rome that they found in the documents, cluster the evidence like you have here. This is one possible example, although there's hundreds even within this little MiniQ of ways to go with this. And then develop a thesis statement based on these buckets. And so we pair the bucketing and what we call the chicken foot on the same page so students know that they are related. So step 5 is bucketing and the chicken foot. The last section, really, there's a couple of sections we move into the writing. And we won't go detailed into the writing structures, but what we want students to do is follow a constructed outline that gets to evidence-based writing, in particular with a clear thesis or claim statement, a clear topic, sentences or subclaims, and evidence and reasoning in every body paragraph. So that's a summary of the 6 steps. Hope it is helpful.
And throughout the training today, we'll definitely dig deeper into the 6-step method. We'll look at the 6-step method, maybe also in a remote setting. And if there's any questions, again, please feel free to ask. And you have some other resources and videos to dig deeper into the 6-step method as well. So what I want to do next then is move on into the online platform, right? I want to make sure you all can log in. You know how your kids log in. You can log in through Clever, and then we'll start looking at creating classes, that kind of thing. So I'm actually going to show you how you're going to log on through Clever. I know we talked about it briefly earlier, but Vincent Tinker made this video to show you, just to walk you through step by step on exactly how to do this. So Vincent, thank you for making that.
To access DBQ project through Clever, first you must go to the JCPS Clever page. Then you need to log in. I do this by clicking on Login with Google. That is connected to my Google JCPS account. Then it'll take you to their main page. You can find DBQ project under district page. Under district page applications, you can now see DBQ project online. If you would like this to be on your main page, you can select the little favorite heart button there, and it will now be on your main page in the future. To go into DBQ project, just click on DBQ project. This is the main page of DBQ project in which you can access all of their files. If this is the first time that you are accessing DBQ project, you'll be prompted with a terms use page. There they will list the DBQ project terms of use. If you scroll to the bottom, you will see an accept button that you must check, and then you will select yes, accepting DBQ project's terms of use. After you accept it, it will then take you to this page. And that is how you access DBQ project through Clever.
So your dashboard will look something like this, and I'm going to log in here and show you that in just a second. But your student dashboard will look differently. I will go over the student interface during this training as well. So let me just kind of minimize this and go ahead and log in. So again, your DBQ dashboard as an educator will look just like this. There's tons of resources here. A couple things I want to point out is if you ever need like a quick Cliff Notes version of how to create your classes, that kind of thing, there's this short video that says Getting Started with DBQ Online. It won't go into the details that I'm going to show you, but again, it'll show you the basics of how to create a class, a basic assignment, and so on. You also have access to this PD video section. If you click on that, it'll take you to the PD page of this teacher of DBQ Online. In here, you have access to almost 40 videos. The larger videos deal with our 6-step method. It shows the 6-step method in action in an actual classroom. It talks about best practices, all that. So there's these videos. And then you have access to these smaller videos that are skill builder videos too. So how do you prep a document to, analyze it? How do you teach kids to analyze an image or interpret a poem? So again, educators, if you have the time, check these little skill builder videos out. They're just a fantastic resource for best instructional practices. Clicking on this DBQ Online button on the top left-hand corner of your screen will take you back to the main page. The next thing that I want to point your attention to is your DBQ library. So when you click on that, that will take you to the library. This is where all your binders are going to be housed. So what I would recommend is, before you get too into the nitty-gritty of creating your assignments, is go ahead and maybe preview what you have access to. So 6th grade teachers, you might click on World History Volume 1 and check out what you have. You start off with Hammurabi and you go all the way to the to Fall of Rome. All right. So lots of different resources here. And again, your JCPS social studies team has aligned the standards to our questions. So as I mentioned before, EV version, CV version, you have some choice there. If you have students who are Spanish speakers and need a little bit of language support, our U.S. history, world history, and our elementary binders, you can assign in Spanish, as well as have the ability to toggle back and forth between the languages. I just want to point out that that's there. So before you make your first assignment, one thing I recommend is maybe clicking on preview and looking at that assignment. Okay, and you can just preview it, see what's there. And as Chip mentioned, see how many documents are there, maybe look at the documents, that kind of thing. Okay? All right. So next, let's go over how to create classes and assignments. To create a class, you're going to go to this middle tile here that says classes and assignments. When you click on view, it'll take you to this page. Now I already have a class built in, yours will be blank. So to add a class, you're going to find this button that says add a class, click on that, and it'll prompt you to name your class. And as Russ said earlier, we encourage that you name this class exactly what your class is called in Google Classroom, just to make life easier for your students. So I'm just going to type that class in. Maybe it's just first period US history. Select save, and it's done. Every time you create a class, that class code that we mentioned earlier just auto-populates. So you don't have to do anything. You just have to share it with the kids. And in a little bit, I'll show you how the kids will use these class codes to log in also. So there's the class code for this particular class. And then if I have a second period, US history, notice how the class code is different. So just be sure that you share the correct class code with each section that you teach.
And Imali, that looks, it's really similar to how Google Classroom works. So anybody who has experience with that, this is not a heavy lift or anything to make these.
Absolutely. And I have a sixth grader at home myself who accesses DBQ online through Clever, and they also use Google Classrooms. And it's been super, it's just been very simple to use. Okay. So let me show you next how to add an assignment. To add an assignment, you're going to select Add Assignment, and this is going to take you right back to that library. And then you'll go to the binder of your choice. I'm going to go ahead and stick with American history since that's what I taught, and that's where I'm a little bit more comfortable with content. And I'm going to go to one of my absolute favorite units, and that is Valley Forge, which you have quit, our lesson that deals with the American Revolution. I'm going to go ahead and use the enhanced version with those text-dependent questions. So when I select which version I want, I get prompted with a couple more choices. The first choice is, do I want to give this unit as it is, with all the documents in it, all the pages in it, or do I want to customize it? So let's say I'm in a hurry and I don't have time to go through all the documents. I can very easily take couple of documents away. Now, educators, I do want to not caution you necessarily, but just to kind of just put this thought in your head about the fact that if it's an argumentative prompt, right? Hammurabi's code wasn't just. If you're eliminating documents, just make sure you eliminate documents for both positions, right? So you're not leading the kids towards a certain answer. So just be cognizant of that. So maybe I'll take 2 of these documents away. Maybe instead of using the comprehension questions, I'm having them do something else. So just with a couple of simple clicks, I can make this assignment look however I want it to look. Also, maybe for my first DBQ that I'm doing with my students, I'm not going to have them write an essay. Instead, I'm going to have them, verbally share their claim through a Flipgrid. So just like that, the whole essay page is eliminated. So I have a short assignment that I can use with my kids. A little hook exercise to get them engaged, some contextual reading, couple documents, and then they share, their argument through Flipgrid. Making an assignment, it's that quick. So once you have the assignment the way that you like it, you're going to be asked if you want to turn on some additional supports. These additional supports are there also if you select the entire unit also. These additional supports do not change. Oops, now I have to go back and let me take those pages out. There we go. Okay. So again, if you need that English-Spanish toggle, you can select yes. One of the most important tools that we recommend that you're using for remote learning is the audio. This gives the ability for the kids to get some reading support, hear the textual documents. The next couple of supports deal with the essay if you're writing the essay. If you don't select these supports and you're writing the essay, the kids get a very standard essay outline, like the one that you saw in Chip's video dealing with Fall of Rome. If you want to give additional supports, you have some choices. The first choice is, do you want to give the kids sentence frames or sentence starters to go along with their essay outlines? If you have some kiddos who really need some help with writing, or you want to model what good writing looks like, you can turn on the guided essay, which are the sentence starters. You can also activate the essay builder, which it's kind of hard for me to explain what the essay builder does. What I'll do is I'll show you in a little bit. So you can turn those on also. And if you want to show kids like a sample writing or like an exemplar piece, we also have sample writing also. Every lesson that's in our MiniQ binders come with 3 sample essay, a basic, a non-proficient, and then a higher proficiency. If you remember the Brady Bunch from back in the day, this is definitely Cindy, Jan, and Marcia. Sometimes Marcia can be intimidating, so check out the basic proficient essays also. They're very realistic, but we want to steer them towards those high proficiency essays also. Okay, so again, these writing supports are there if you're going to write the essay as well. We do have rubrics that are built in to our platform, but I know that you also at your district have a different rubric for performance tasks. I'm not sure if Ryan or Vincent want to say anything about that before I move on.
Yeah, we've got, thanks, Imali. So we've got a new set of rubrics that we're looking at, and Vincent can go more into detail with this because he's created the video for this. But essentially, our rubric looks at these 4 criteria. Is the claim or the argument, is it clear? Is it accurate? Is it evidenced? Is it reasoned? Right. And we've got it. I sort of mixed up the order there a little bit. The first thing we're looking for, is it accurate? Right. I mean, we're living in a civic time where, knowledge is being questioned constantly. So we're looking to make sure that students are providing accurate information. Right. And then looking at how do we move then that accurate information to make sure that it's clear. Right. And the use of language and how it works. And then we're looking at, well, what kind of evidence and how are they using the evidence when it comes to that claim or argument? And ultimately, what is the reasoning that is connecting that evidence to the claim? And so we actually have built that into the website. And so the website will be there. It'll have form and performance task rubric as a list, and we link that out. So if you guys need extra additional help with that, by all means, please reach out to us.
Great. And if you're using Google Classrooms, what I would recommend is putting that rubric in your Google Classroom. That way your kids have access to that while they're working on their essay on the platform. At this time, our platform does not allow you to add your own rubrics into it, at least not yet, but we hope to do that in the future. So again, once you have this lesson the way you want it, then you're going to go ahead and send this out to your kids. There is one other question they ask you, and I'm going to show you this feature a little later when in a classroom where I have actual kids. But basically what this last question asks is, with this lesson that you create, do you want to send this to specific kids? So once my kids are in my classroom, I have the ability to send this lesson to just certain kids, right? Maybe I only want the Spanish toggle for like 3 kids. So you have the ability to push out lessons to certain kids also. But I promise you, in a little bit, when I log into a different account with real students, I'll show you that particular feature again. So you make this lesson, and then you have 2 choices. Do you want to save it? Right? It's done. Or do you want to go ahead and push it out to your kids? For our purpose right now, I'm just going to hit save. That way it's not a live assignment, but it's created. Then I'll show you how to change a draft assignment that's saved into a live assignment that your kids have. So you're probably going, well, why would I hit save instead of save and assign? Maybe you have, like a work day where you're trying to get ahead, making some of these lessons, and you might not want your kids to access them just yet. So if you're doing that kind of thing, hit save. And then when you're ready to push the assignment out, you can change it to save and assign. And I'll go over that in just a minute. Regardless of which option you choose, you're going to get this pop-up. And this is one of the most important things I think we're going to go over today. And it's this question: do you want to mark up your unit? Do you want to add teacher instructions, annotations, anything like that? So again, really, really, really important. I'm going to go ahead and click Add Markups. And what I want you to notice is right now I'm in this lesson, this Valley Forge lesson, and there is this little yellow box that's kind of lit up. This is how you know you're in markup mode. Let me repeat that. This little yellow lit little icon reminds you that you are in instructor markup mode. And what happens in this instructor markup mode is anything that you write on this page or annotate or do transfers over to your kids' pages as well, right? Because they have their own accounts, right? Where they can annotate, do things, answer questions also. So let's say I want to give my kids some extra directions on what to do in this page. I can type directions, notes, hints, and it'll also transfer to their page. So if you're doing anything asynchronous and you want little reminders in there, you can add those notes right into the lesson. So it's a really, really great feature, but you want to make sure you're in this instructor markup mode. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to this dashboard. So here's our lesson. I can always go back and add instructor markup modes. So or instructor markups, excuse me. So let me go to this little settings icon, this little gear sprocket, whatever you want to call it. When I click on that, I can go to where it says edit teacher markup, and I can add other things in. So maybe I want to circle something that I want them to pay attention to. Maybe it's the title of the essential question. I can do that, and it's now on their pages as well. All right. So anytime a lesson is live, you can go back and add things as they need more help. Now, to take a lesson that is a draft, right? And when you're ready to push it out, you're going to actually go back to that little sprocket, that settings icon. And this time you're going to go back to the assignment by clicking edit assignment. And this time, instead of selecting save, you're going to select save and assign. It'll ask you if you want to add any more markups. I'm going to go ahead and hit not now. And now this lesson is assigned and it's live. And once your kids are in your classroom through that code, they can access it. All right. So again, we have drafts versus assigned. So what I'm going to show you next is actually a lesson that I've already marked up. I already marked up this Valley Forge lesson in a different class. Let me go to my second period US history. Same lesson. Here's the Valley Forge lesson, except I have all the markups done. And in this particular sample, I did turn the essay on. So I did turn on the sample essays also. But notice how they're set to off, because maybe I don't want my kids to see those right away. So don't worry, your kids won't see those sample essays until you want them to see it. And you have the access to turn on maybe just a certain essay, maybe just the basic, or maybe the higher proficiency. So I'm going to go ahead and hit view, select view. And now I'm back in this Valley Forge lesson. So ladies and gentlemen, notice how that little yellow little lit box, it's gone. So now I'm not in markup mode, right? Whatever I do at this point, this is my own page. But I can use this if I'm doing, any kind of synchronous learning. So if I'm using Google Meets or Zoom or whatever I'm using, I can project my screen to my kids and do any kind of live modeling for them. And the kids have their own page where they can kind of follow along also. Navigating these units are pretty simple. To go from page to page, you can go to this little drop-down bar and you can go to the next page. You can also use the arrows to move forward or backwards. As I mentioned before, I added some markups already to this lesson. So I added some simple directions for my kids. Apparently, I forgot to number my directions, forgive me. But just basic things maybe I want them to do. Maybe the first thing I want them to do is read the MiniQ question or our essential question or compelling question and put a circle around it using the annotation tools. So the teacher has annotation tools, and these same annotation tools are on the kids' accounts as well. Because our thinking is when we use paper, we constantly have kids mark up their work, right? We make them highlight, we make them circle words they don't know, we make them make margin notes. So we want you to be able to do the same type of work and thinking on our online platform. So they can grab one of the circle tools and they can circle it just like in the directions that I gave them. The image can be enlarged with a simple click. It's a really great image, a lot of things to learn. And the directions that I gave my students said, look at the picture, read the overview, and on a green Post-it, write 5 things that you learned about Valley Forge from this cover page, right? So they read the overview, the fact that it's winter of 1777 through the, early months of 1778. And George Washington is, with several thousand Patriot soldiers, and they're at Valley Forge, their winter encampment. And it's 18 miles outside of Philadelphia. So maybe on this green Post-it, they'll jot down 5 things that they see, right? So anything that you want your kids to do, anything addition to the questions that we have, feel free to add it using the instructor markup tools. And again, whatever the kids do, you'll be able to see it also. And I'll demonstrate that once we look at the student interface. But any of their annotations that they're making, any questions that they're answering, you can in real time go and check on them and see what they're doing also. So again, this is the cover page, and those are just 2 basic annotation tools, the Post-it and the circle tool. And notice everything is auto-saving while I work also.
Love these features, Imali. It's really great. The interactivity is awesome. And I'm glad you pointed out the auto-save feature so nobody loses their work.
Absolutely. And if you walk away, if the system times out, there'll be a message, like a pop-up that reminds you to log back in. So there's no reason to lose any work, because that's always scary when you're a kid or a teacher losing work that you worked really hard on. So the cover page is the first page that the students would see, and educators notice that, since I'm on a teacher account, I have my teacher notes right there. I can toggle very quickly, right? So there's always these teacher notes also. And it's just toggling back and forth. So the first step in our 6-step method, as Chip mentioned, is a hook exercise. We always have a little hook exercise to get the kids talking, get the kids excited about the topic. And in this case, let me backtrack. This particular DBQ, as I mentioned, is one of my absolute favorites. Every year, my kids loved it. It was their favorite too. And it's a little unique because there's a hint of a narrative element to it, because you're looking at everything through the perspective of a colonial soldier. And to warm them up to that idea of looking at this historical event through the perspective of a soldier, in this hook exercise, we have them look at this particular scenario through the perspective of this gentleman named Uncle Levi, who's a Quaker. And they have a little conversation here as, if you are this Quaker Uncle Levi, who would you sell your, goods to, right? You have all these things like butter, potatoes, things to sell. Would you sell to the colonial army that's nearby, or would you sell to the British army, that's somewhat nearby also? Because we really want them, again, dates, facts, all that is really, really important, right? But we also have to remember the stories, the people, the perspective. That's vital also. So again, in this hook exercise, they kind of have to decide based on facts, based on evidence, what would they do? Who would they sell their food and their goods to? So that's the hook exercise for this DBQ. Again, we recommend doing the hook exercise in a synchronous setting. If you have breakout rooms in your Google Meets, this is a great place for them to work on the hook exercise, right? And then come back as a class and debrief. There are questions typically in the hook exercise to drive the discussion. Notice there isn't like a text box for the kids to answer the questions. Let me actually go forward. In the documents itself, there are text boxes built in to type their answers. In the hook exercise and in some of our other pages, there isn't. And the reason why we did that is because really certain pages, it's more prep work than work where the kids are work that should be graded, if that makes sense, right? One thing that we really believe in is that the hook exercise might not be something that you grade, because it's really the purpose of it is to get kids talking, right? You haven't done too much, really any direct teaching with this hook exercise. So if there isn't a place for the kids to type and you want them to type something, they can grab one of our text boxes and they can jot it down. So yes, they're still writing, but it might be not something you collect to actually grade. So you have these text tools where they can type their answers as well. They can change the font color, the size, all those good things. Okay? All right. So that's the first page, our hook exercise. After the hook exercise, then they go into the background essay. I apologize for the barking dogs in the background if you all can hear it. That's the thing with teaching or working from home, right? Best of intentions until the dogs bark or the Amazon truck comes or whatever, or their internet goes out. Anyways, so the hook exercise, 15, 20 minutes, there to get the kids talking. The second page, step 2, is when we hit them with some content. So our thinking behind it is, okay, the kids are excited, they're talking, they're interested, the engagement is at a peak. Now let's get them to read, because reading doesn't always pique every kid's interest. So let's hit them with some content while we can. So every one of our MiniQs has a one-pager, a document to give them some context. That way, the documents, when they see them, make sense. We try to give them a time period. We try to give them like the geography of it, like where are we? Like if we're talking about Philadelphia, well, where's Philadelphia, right? Where is that in conjunction to, where some of the other battles are happening, that kind of thing. Who are the key players, right? Washington, like who, what's happening in France. So we just try to give them a little bit of context. As Chip mentioned in his video, we have an audio support.
Valley Forge, would you have quit? The first 2 years of the American Revolution had not gone well for the Continental Army. Since the summer of 1775, when he had taken command, George Washington and his troops had withdrawn from Boston and retreated from New York City.
So again, if your kids are working asynchronously and they need the reading support, this audio feature is fantastic to use. Once again, definition or vocab words can be clicked on to get definitions right away. And depending on your internet browser and its settings, you should be able to highlight, right click, and look up definitions that way also for any word, since our platform is browser based. Once again, those teacher notes, educators, you can toggle very quickly to and check out. And with the instructor markup, you can give kids additional directions. So maybe one of the things I want my kids to do with this page is read it twice. The first time, I want them to just focus on the big picture, just focus on understanding the content, just listen. And the second read, I might give them a task or an active reading task to do. One of my favorite things to have my kids do is, because they're so into social media, is have them, write a couple of hashtags in the margins, right? And then maybe underline the content that matches that particular hashtag. So maybe for paragraph 1, a kid might say, you know what, they're losing a lot. This is a lost cause. That might be their hashtag. And they might, with the freehand tool, which can be used to highlight, because you can change the transparency and the width of the pen, they might say that, right, they lost General Howe already marched on the capital of Philadelphia, so they can prove to me why they made that hashtag. So educators, yes, we have, text-dependent questions and comprehension questions, but if there's any reading strategies that, anything that you use, feel free to add your creativity into any of these pages with that instructor markup tool. And one of the last things I want to mention to you too is in the background essay, one of the most important paragraphs is the last paragraph, because it sets up the task and the question in this DBQ. So for example, as I mentioned, this DBQ has a little bit of a narrative element to it. It says that, you're a soldier, your 9-month enlistment is coming up. General Washington needs you desperately. You have, an aging mother at home. What are you going to do? And they have to decide based on what they're going to see in those documents, right? Because it's an evidence-based essay. They can't just say, I'm going home because of all these reasons that aren't supported in the documents. So I just want to mention that this last paragraph is a paragraph that you might want to spend some time looking over with your kids. So again, the hook exercise, 15, 20 minutes, maybe less. Background essay, depending on the age, might take 20 minutes, but sometimes, more like 30. I did 6 DBQs, 6 weeks worth of DBQs with the remote group in the spring. And by the 3rd, 4th DBQ, we could go get through one of these lessons in 4 days. And on the 5th day, they finished up their essay or they finished up their end task and we were done. And our time together was about an hour. And I gave them very little asynchronous work to do too, maybe just wrapping up some of the questions. So it's very, very doable. But the more DBQs they do, the faster they're going to be at it, right? The first time you do this, it's going to take you longer because you'll be teaching them how to use the annotation tools. You'll be explaining what buckets are. But once they, again, do a couple of these, it's much, much easier. Now imagine your 6th graders doing this, right, with you, if you're a 6th grade educator, and then they do this in 7th grade, and 8th grade, and 9th grade. It's just going to make historical thinking, right, and evidence-based writing so much easier with that vertical alignment that we're creating. So that's the first 2 steps. The 3rd step of the DBQ method, as I'm going just a little bit deeper into the process while getting you accustomed to the online platform, is bucketing and clarifying the question. In my opinion, I think this is the most important step in the process because it'll make or break your lesson. So the first part of this lesson, or step 3, we spend some time making sure the kids understand the question. What's our compelling question, right? So first they identify it, right? Our question is Valley Forge, would you have quit? And then we ask them, are there any words that could be tricky? Any words that we need to ask ourselves, well, what's the context, right? Is it a multiple meaning word? Like in this particular situation, what do we mean by this word? And most kids might say, well, Valley Forge could be tricky. It's not a battle. It's actually a winter camp. And the word quit might be tricky, right? What does quit mean? Are these soldiers are they going AWOL? Are they deserting? But it's really not, because the background essay said this soldier's enlistment was coming up. So we just have this conversation and we give kids a reason to look at the question closer. Because as educators, we often read kids' work and we go, what the heck is this kid talking about? And it's because they misread the question. So in every one of our DBQs, we make the kids slow down and rewrite the question in their own words. So we know, this is our formative check, that they know what the question is asking and they know what they have to do at the end, what their task is. What am I going to prove, right? What am I going to argue at the end? That kind of thing. So that's the first part of step 3. And again, super, super important in my humble opinion. Then we also introduce buckets to our kids. At conferences, we're always known for our buckets. I don't ever want to be called a bucket people or anything like that, but we are known for our buckets. If this is an informational DBQ or an expository DBQ, like why did Rome fall? The kids might see 3 buckets, 4 buckets, 5 buckets, and every bucket represents a reason why Rome fell, right? If our DBQ is how did Nile shape the ancient Egyptian culture, then the kids might see 3 buckets, and each bucket might represent a way that the Nile shaped Egyptian culture. But this particular DBQ is not an informational or an expository prompt. It is Valley Forge, would you have quit? Or if you rewrite the question in your own words, it's more of Valley Forge, would you go home or would you choose to re-enlist? That's really the question. So each bucket represents an answer. We have our bucket for yes, I would re-enlist. Let's make this green. It's spelled re-enlist. Okay. And maybe the second bucket, and notice how I can just kind of copy it, duplicate it. And bucket 2 might be go home. So what the kids have to do is they have to very clearly identify, collect, categorize evidence for both positions, right? And kids have been taught how to classify, categorize since kindergarten, right? They've done that. They've done that with shapes in kindergarten. They learned how to classify and sort in science. So this is not something that's new to them. Well, what we're doing is we're giving them an organizational structure. So if you have a prompt with 2 sides, hey kids, look at both sides of the issue, right? Collect evidence for both, then take a position on it. Don't take a position on it and just look for evidence to support your position. Look at both sides, take a position, and back it up with evidence. And if you want to, once we get to the counter arguments, right, you already have evidence for the other side also. So you know how to, start formulating a counter argument as well. So that's kind of what DBQ is all about, giving kids a way to think. Because sometimes it's hard work, right? Sometimes thinking is hard work for kids. So that's buckets, ladies and gentlemen. So again, in this DBQ, we start off with 2 buckets. And at the end, once they've seen all the evidence, they'll take a position and they'll give us reasons for that position. So if they're choosing to go home as this colonial soldiers, they'll take whatever's in this bucket and they'll sort it into 3 main ideas or 3 reasons for their position. And it could be 2 reasons if you modified the documents, right? If you took some documents away, it could be 1 reason, but each bucket represents a reason. So notice everything up to this point has been prep work. We haven't even touched the document yet. All we've done is prep the kids for success. We made sure they were interested through the hook. We gave them some background reading because content's important. We made sure they understand the question. And we make sure that we prime their mind, or they frame their mind to collect evidence. So first 3 steps of the DBQ 6-step method is all prep work. And we have these annotation tools, again, to help the kids mark up the page. Once that's completed, then they're going to go ahead and go to the documents. As I mentioned before, if you turn on the Spanish toggle, you can go back and forth, which is really, really great. If you're using the enhanced version, you have these questions, and the questions are also tiered, right? The first questions are right off the document. Then they become more difficult as they go, where they have to make some inferences. And the last question or last 2 questions always are a synthesis question that asks the kids to tie the evidence back to our essential question. So our first question's very basic, right? Let's look at our source. Is this a primary source or a secondary source? Explain your thinking. Very, very basic. And the sourcing questions will get difficult as the document goes, or as the DBQ goes. Okay? All right. I'm not going to go through every document, but I want to just look at a couple of documents, and then we'll start wrapping up the 6-step method. Then I'll log in as a student, and I'll show you what the student interface looks like. But really, your kids on their dashboard, when they're working on DBQ Valley Forge, they'll see exactly this, except they won't see the teacher's notes. They won't be able to toggle back and forth. So one of my favorite documents in this particular unit is document B. This particular engraving, by William Henry Powell. So again, educators, as a tool to analyze this document, you have these questions if you choose to use them. And with the instructor markup tool, you can also add other things. So one of the things that Ryan mentioned earlier is that there are some disciplinary literacy prompts, right? There's prompts for sourcing, corroborating. You could add those prompts right into this DBQ using that instructor markup tool.
Imali, if you don't mind, we do have a source analysis tool that is in the chat, and it's also found on our website that has disciplinary literacy questions and critical literacy questions. They're aligned along the disciplinary literacy line that teachers can pull from for sourcing, corroboration, contextualization, and close reading that they could easily put in, as you mentioned, with these annotations for each source.
Thanks, Vincent. This particular source in particular, if you use some of those prompts or those sourcing questions, it'll really help kind of go deeper into this document. Like the fact that this particular engraving was done in the Reconstruction era is huge, right? This is not a primary source from the American Revolution. This was created during Reconstruction for a very specific reason, right? Right around the same time, the painting of Washington crossing the Delaware. So, I mean, kids have to think about, there's a reason why Washington looks like this in the middle. Yes, he was tall, but I mean, he's portrayed very stoic for a reason. So again, make sure you guys check out the source analysis tool. And again, if you take a minute to corroborate this particular document, that question of like reliability and corroborating will point out that this painting, this engraving, is not completely historically accurate. Like the huts that we see back here, there's windows. And if we had read the background essay, it says very clearly that there were no windows in these huts, just a, like a chimney to get the smoke out and a door. So really important to spend some time corroborating and sourcing and all those good things. Okay. Again, questions are there. I want to take a minute and just point out the directions that I gave my students here. I personally like to make my kids use a text box to write the compelling question on the top of their page to remind them why they're here looking at this document in the first place, right? If you were a soldier, because they had to write the question in their own words, soldier at Valley Forge, would you enlist? Right? Give them again that purpose for reading and remind them again what their compelling question is. Again, you might think I'm kind of mean to my students, but I always tell them to prove to me that they read everything around the document by underlining it or putting an arrow or something by it, because they often skip source lines and note lines and things like that, and notes and footnotes. And as educators, you know how important those are. For example, there's a caption down here that says, here's George Washington presenting the Congressional Committee to soldiers at Valley Forge. The committee of 5 congressmen stayed for several weeks and was helpful in getting more food and clothing to the soldiers. So that piece of evidence about the fact that they were helpful in getting food and clothing, that's huge. That's really, really important piece of evidence to support the bucket of why you might re-enlist, right? Supplies are coming. There's hope. But if the kids didn't read that, well, they missed a big thing. So I always ask my kids to read around the document and prove to me that you did it by highlighting it, putting an arrow on it, underlining it, something. And again, you can have the kids answer the questions, or you can have them do something else. This is such an amazing image. So I might, with this image, ask my kids to highlight or circle any evidence that supports staying in green, kind of like those bucket colors that we used. Let me change this. This is bugging me because it's green now. Okay, sorry, y'all. Well, I'll come back and do that. I think these are overlapping. There we go. Okay. So they might look at this image and circle things in green that supports re-enlisting. Or the fact that there's a dead horse down here, well, that might go in the bucket for not re-enlisting, right? Even the animals are falling over. So a lot of things the kids can do here. And as I mentioned, it's really important for us at DBQ to be able to do on DBQ Online what you might do on paper. So, for example, when I did this lesson with my kids, one of the things that we did is we looked at the different, I don't want to say characters, but the key players here. There's 3 sides here, right? There's Washington in the center of the screen. We have our Continental Congress on one side, and we have our soldiers on the other side. So I might, with my students, say, guys, I want you to pick a congressman. I want you to take George Washington here and take one soldier. And I want you to look at this image. Look at this image really closely. Think about what you see, right? We see snow on the ground. We see a dead horse. We see George Washington with his hands a certain way. I see swords up. I see a missing toe, right? If you're in this situation as one of these key players, right, going through this event, because everyone's perspective is different based on who they are, right? Like George Washington's experiencing something different than the congressman, than the soldier. Make a thought bubble or a caption of what you think they might be saying. So maybe a student might take the text box and say, I think George Washington is saying, my troops need supplies. The cause is important and we need help to achieve it. Right? Maybe that's what George Washington is saying. And the other day I had a teacher who asked me, how come there wasn't spell check? And I'm like, there is spell check. I promise. It's there. So maybe that's what George Washington is saying. And then they can use the freehand tool to go ahead and prove that this is what George Washington is saying, right? Maybe it's a thought bubble. Maybe it's a caption bubble. So again, educators, anything that you do that you normally might do, feel free to bring those ideas into these documents, okay? So just 2 quick things that you can do. You can make them highlight evidence. You can have them answer the questions. You can have them create thought bubbles or caption bubbles on what the different key people are saying. Lots of different options for document analysis. It doesn't just have to be answer questions and make these documents into very painful worksheets, okay? So just real quick, before we move on to the actual, to start wrapping up this lesson, I want to point out again our audio support. We did match up the actors or the readers to the source. So here we have excerpts from the diary entry of the surgeon, of the main surgeon at Valley Forge, Dr. Albajans Waldo. But notice how, again, the reader, well, it sounds like possibly what Dr. Waldo sounded like, right? It's not a woman with, reading it. Because we really want the students to imagine what this source might be, imagine them actually speaking.
No, Dr. Waldo suffered during his winter at Valley Forge, but stayed loyal to the Continental Army as he helped other surgeons care for sick soldiers.
December 14th, 1777. The army, which has been surprisingly healthy hitherto, now begins to grow sickly from the continued fatigues that have suffered this campaign. Yet they still show a spirit of alacrity and contentment not to be expected from so young troops.
So again, ladies and gentlemen, audio is a fabulous feature to use if you need it. All right. So that is step 4, document analysis. And this will take a few days, right? Each document might take 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes at first. I typically do about 2 documents per class period, and that'll be the meat and the bulk of the lesson. Prep work with steps 1 through 3, and then step 4, you are analyzing documents, you're collecting evidence, you're constantly connecting the documents back to our bucket. So I might ask my kids these last questions. What evidence can we use for going home? What evidence can we use for staying? That kind of thing. Okay? So that is step 4. And our last document, just so you know, is an excerpt from Thomas Paine that George Washington reads to his troops to kind of get them motivated. So it's step 4. At this point, if you're doing a DBQ, you don't necessarily have to do the writing, right? We want you to write at least once every quarter to get the benefit of our program. We recommend 4 essays a year, okay? But if you're not writing the essay, this might be where you communicate your directions, right? Post something on this discussion board, or I've used choice boards with my kids for their end product. Or maybe you're having a flip grid here where the kids have to argue what they would do if they were this colonial soldier. Are they going home or are they staying? Why? Use the evidence to back it up, that kind of thing. Then, if you are writing the essay, I want to point out again, you have some writing support. So the essay isn't such a daunting task for your kids. You can give them a basic essay outline, and there's the word processing screen that looks like, hold on one second, that looks like this, where the kids can start typing their essay. So it could be that simple. Or you can use our essay builder and our guided essay with sentence starters. So I'm going to show you this essay builder very quickly, and then I'll show you what the student side looks like. So our essay builder it kind of goes in parts. Again, this is an optional tool that you can turn on. If you're writing the essay, the first thing is we have the bucket. So at this point, the student has taken a position. Yes, I'm re-enlisting, or no, I'm going home. I'm going to go ahead and go home if I was a soldier, because I don't think I would make a very good soldier. I think I might not survive in the snow and without food. So first of all, I can tell my kids how many body paragraphs I want. So maybe I'm going to say I only want 2 body paragraphs for this essay. And with that one click, one bucket is gone. The next thing I'm going to have my kids do is I'm going to ask them, okay, well, what are those reasons for staying? Look at the buckets, right? If you forgot what you did, go back and look at your work. And that's the cool thing. All their work, they can very easily access with a click. I love this feature because my students were notorious for losing their work. They had no idea where document A is. It's in their locker. Document C is in their desk. Document D is in their backpack. Document B might be stuck to their shoe. So this just kind of has everything in one spot. So maybe a student says, one reason why I'm going home is that, there's a lot of people who are sick. And that was in document A, right? Half the camp is sick. So they're going home because many are sick. And he or she might say the other reason why they're going home is because the camp conditions are awful, right? There's just not a lot of supplies, that kind of thing. So notice what's happening, ladies and gentlemen, is when you have the essay builder turned on, is whatever's in the bucket titles, it starts auto-populating in the chicken foot that you saw earlier with Jeff. And what I can do now is I can start drafting my claim. And our chicken foot coaches kids on how to write a clear claim. The first part of it is, of course, putting the bucket titles in the toes of the chicken foot. The second part of it, and this is honestly, if you have a different way of teaching kids how to write a claim, by all means, ladies and gentlemen, keep doing that. I like this system because it's so easy. So what I would do next is I would take my essential question. If you were a soldier at Valley Forge, would you quit? And I would rephrase that into a statement, right? I would change that into a sentence starter. So my question was, if I was a soldier, would I quit? So my sentence starter would be, if I was a soldier at Valley Forge, I would go home because. And then here are my bucket titles already in there. Many are sick, and I can make this better by adding words, and the camp conditions. That is a clear claim. And I know exactly what's going to be in my essay. Here's body paragraph 1. Here's body paragraph 2. And then when I read this out loud, if I was a soldier at Valley Forge, I would go home because many are sick and the camp conditions are awful. It's that easy to teach the kids how to write. And in their writing, they'll back it up with evidence. For our kinesthetic learners, they can drag and drop the documents right into the buckets, right? So document A was all about the sickness and the deaths at Valley Forge, which we didn't look at. Document B has information about the conditions, and so does document C. So now my kids know exactly which documents they need to refer to. And once this section is done and they have a thesis started, they move on to the next section. And notice how the organizational structure changes here on the page. Now the documents are placed within that bucket. So what the kids might do here at this point is they might go back to their document and start thinking, what evidence should I use for this body paragraph? One piece of evidence might be that 50% of the soldiers are sick at Valley Forge. Come on, spell check. Help me out. Are sick, right? And that's right from document A. So again, they can start pulling out the best evidence. Same thing for camp conditions. And then they go into their essay outline once they're prepped, right? They know exactly what they're going to write about. And here they have their outline. But I turn on the guided essay with the sentence starters. So kids also have sentence starters to help them. Oh, maybe I didn't turn it on. Oh, just kidding. I didn't. But what is cool about this essay builder, though, is whatever they write here, it actually auto-populates as a paragraph. You know what, ladies and gentlemen, hold on. I'm going to go ahead and get out of this real quick. So right there, something happened, right? I had a plan and my plan was wrong, right? Like I forgot to turn something on. So here's how cool it is. I can go back even while the kids are working because I realized I didn't turn something on. I could edit the assignment. And I'm going to very quickly turn on the sentence starters because I forgot. Save and assign it. And let me go back. Let me go back to the essay builder. I was here with the outline. Whew, crisis averted, right? Now I have my sentence starters here. Okay? So if you're ever like in that moment of panic, don't worry. You can go back and edit your assignment right away. So as I mentioned, the guided essay gives the kids sentence starters. Again, your kids might not need this, but maybe some of your kids do. Or maybe you want your kids to have it the first time because you want to coach them on how to write a good body paragraph. So again, here's the sentence starter. I know there's the word I here. Again, this is one of the few DBQs that has a little bit of a narrative element, and you could change it into third person if you want to. So this kid might say, the first reason I will not re-enlist, right? Not re-enlist is due to all the sickness and deaths at camp. Right? And then it coaches the kids. Oh, okay, go use the evidence to provide reason one. Okay, 50% of the people are sick. That was document A. And I can keep doing this. And then there is a sentence starter if they want to use it. This reason is causing me to not re-enlist because, or I can do something else. I can say, with half the camp sick, we are too weak to fight. It's a lost cause. I am going home, right? So the kids start filling their outline. Again, sentence starters there if they need it. So with this essay builder, it coaches them on how to outline. But what's really cool is once that section is done, they're going to click build paragraph. And then it puts all their work together. Obviously, I would have written more than this, but it shows them that writing an essay like this or a body paragraph like this is not a frightening, daunting task. We start giving the kids, as Phil said earlier in the video, Phil Roden, our other co-founder, we start giving the kids some confidence to formulate their writing. And then they keep repeating this process. And when they're finished, they're going to build their essay. And all their work would be in this one word processing sheet, which they can at this point send to their teacher by clicking send to teacher here on the bottom right. Or on the very top here, they can export and a simple Word document's going to pop up, which they can, submit through their Google Classroom. So again, you have lots of different choices on collecting student work. I'll go over that again, but the teacher can ask the students to send it directly to them on the online platform, which you as the teacher can grade right on the online platform too, which I would show you. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is the essay builder and our 6-step method in action.
Imali, this is such a good process, right? I have a very difficult exercise. And one of the things that we oftentimes get a lot of questions about, which I'll reiterate here, is what do we do with students asynchronously and what do we do with them synchronously? What we're really recommending is that the asynchronous stuff is anything that which students can sort of productively struggle through without being, completely crushed by the assignment. And then whenever students are together with the teacher, that whatever is a skill involved, that's what's really going on with the teacher. So just to reiterate, right, the idea that, students might be able to look at, use those questions to help access documents, right? But then if you really want to ratchet down the skill of those disciplinary readings, then let's have the students, right? Yeah, absolutely, right? This is where we pull those together. So the document analysis here could really help with the asynchronous, getting those kids into the classroom so that you could really ratchet down the types of markups that Imali was talking about earlier, so that you're really honing in those disciplinary and critical literacy skills. When students are trying to build the essay, by all means, that needs to be synchronous, right? Being able to help walk them through that whole part, right? So that they are very clear with the types of thinking that you want them to do. Then asynchronously, they can go off and begin to write a bit because you're going to bring them back synchronously and be able to check some of those things out or to be able to give individual comments, right? So just as folks are at home, I just want to sort of reiterate the idea of where asynchronous might make sense and where synchronous might make sense as you go through this.
Thanks, Ryan. And again, the more you do this, the less you'll have to model, right? Once the kids do this essay 3-4 times, they're going to know exactly what the structure of an essay looks like. Again, I know I keep talking about my own child, but they started doing DBQs in 3rd grade and she's in 6th grade. So that chicken foot, I asked her the other day, I'm like, are you going to chicken foot your thesis? And she goes, psh, chicken foot's for babies, Mom. And I'm like, no, it's really not. Like, I like the chicken foot, but she's been using it over and over and over that she doesn't need it anymore. So I promise you, ladies and gentlemen, the first DBQ might be long and you feel like, oh my gosh, this is taking forever. But the more your kids do this, the easier it's going to become. I promise. Okay. In my first DBQ that I did with my students, there were tears involved. I kid you not. This was back in 2007. And it wasn't them that cried. It was me. It was hard work. I had to let go of the way I taught normally, right? I'm always like the master of the content. I'm telling them. But it was like I had to let them go, let them interpret, let them figure out. And when they were struggling, I had to kind of coach them back to where they needed to go. So it is a little bit of different way to go about instruction. But the more you do this, the more comfortable you become and the more comfortable they become. It takes about 3 DBQs, okay? And that's the magic number 3 to get really comfortable with our pedagogy as well as the platform.
Molly, that's a fantastic point. And one of the pieces that we're looking at and trying to figure out is how much stamina that it takes to build over time for these, for students to really get used to that kind of element, right? Because ultimately on the assessment or in their real lives, right, they're not going to have time to like break down a source for 15 minutes, talk to other folks about what's going on. They're going to have to react and not be intimidated by a source that seems foreign to them. Part of the skills that are necessary is getting those students confident, right, as you're talking about. It takes time to build confidence. I can come in and tell my kids, look, you guys are going to do great on the first essay, right? We're going to look at a bunch of documents. This is going to be fantastic. But as soon as that very first foreign source gets to them, they have lost all confidence that I could provide. Instead, it's going to take some time to give them the skills necessary so that when they see a source, they don't say, I can't do this. They say, how can I go about getting as much out of this as possible? And what I used to tell my students, which I'll reiterate here, our job is not to make, right, the complex simple. It's to make the complex accessible. And you make it accessible by systematically scaffolding students' skills so they are more prepared to be independent learners, right? And this is one way of doing it. And it's a fantastic way, right? That if we were to have across the district, K through 12, students being able to build multiple essays using these kind of, using sources as evidence, not only is our democracy going to be better, but our scores on the assessment are going to be better too. So I just want to sort of plug that in again, right? As it takes some time, right? And it's like an instrument, right? The first day that you start to learn a new instrument, it all looks intimidating, especially when you see someone else play it, right? And you're like, I've got to do this too. But if we were to say, you know what, I just can't play the instrument, or the first time you mess up and you can't get it, if you're like, oh, you know what, I'm done, then you're going to always see playing instruments as a foreign, scary thing. And we cannot afford to have our students see the sources that they're going to encounter in the world as scary and foreign, right? So I just want to plug that in as well.
Well said, Ryan. All right, ladies and gentlemen, what I'm going to show you next is I'm actually going to log out of this account, and I'm going to log back into my normal account where I have real students and a couple of real classes. And I want to show you what the student side of it looks like, okay? So real quick, in this particular class, I have here, I'm going to click on my roster. I have some real students, okay? Not very many. It's a small group, but real kids. So when they came to my class, I gave them the class code, and that's how they joined my class. When I make assignments, once my kids have joined my class, what's really neat, and I'm going to do this super fast, I'm just going to randomly grab an assignment, is when I have an assignment, when the kids are in my roster, I have this ability to push it out to just certain kids, which is a really fabulous tool. So maybe these two students, Chloe and Nora, they need the Spanish support. Or maybe Maddie here might need the essay builder while the others do not, that kind of thing. So you, again, once the kids are in your roster, you can differentiate these lessons for different kids. I just want to point that out to you real quick. What I'm going to show you next is how a student what the student interface is going to look like. So I have a class here that I made for today, JCPS. I have one student in here for right now, and it's a mock fake student. That's me. And I just want to point out the class code here. Our class code is WEFMS. I'm going to copy that real quick. So here's the class. My assignment is this lesson on Harriet Tubman, a fantastic lesson, another one of my favorites. I'm going to log out now, and I'm going to log back in as a kid and show you what that's going to look like. So I'm going to use a mock student account with the actual password. Now remember, your students would not have to type in any passwords because they're integrated through Clever. So they would not have to do this, right? But when they go through Clever, they are going to see this page. This is the first thing your kids will see when they log in through Clever. So as Russ said earlier, you want to communicate that class code to your students in Google Classrooms with the stream, or maybe you walk them through this live the first time, up to you. So what the kids would do at this point is they would put that class code in, and then they were going to select join class. And that's it. They're done. They never, ever, ever have to do that again. You're probably going, well, if they never, ever, ever have to do that, how come it still says ready to join my class? Well, that's there in case they're also doing DBQs for ELA, or maybe they're working with a different teacher with an intervention group, that kind of thing. So if they need to join another class, they have the ability to be in multiple classes at once. So the student sees their class name, and then they see their assignment. They click on view. And again, just like what we saw earlier, it's the same exact thing, ladies and gentlemen, that we've been looking at for the last hour and a half, right? They navigate the same way. They have the audio. Whatever I turned on for them, it's there. I didn't put any instructor markups on this, but if they were, they would be here also. So let's say as this kid, I highlight this section in green. I'm just going to highlight it really, really fast, okay? And as the teacher, I want to know if they're working. I can see what they're doing in real time. So let me log out as the student again, real quick. I'm going to log back in as me into my teacher account. Let me go back to my class. So notice when I set up an assignment, every assignment has a manage button. When I click on manage, I see the kids who are in that class, right? It's the same. Hold on, let me actually show you with the real kids. It's the same thing, right? I see all my kiddos that's in the class. I'm going to show you a video in just a minute to show this part in a little bit more of a clearer way. But when you click on manage, you have the student's unit, like everything but the essay, and you can view their essay. So I love this because I truly, truly believe proximity is a vital management tool. But when they're in remote, we all of a sudden lose that tool, right? But when I click on view unit, I can see what this particular student is doing or not doing. So when I go at the background essay, well, there's that highlighted work that I just did, right? So if your kids are working, you know, again, in breakout rooms, or they're working, you know, for you on their own during a live session, you model something and you say, okay, now go do, you can go and peek and see what they're doing while you're waiting, because you might need, some of these kids might need that feedback. They might need someone to just kind of check to make sure they're on the right page. And you as the teacher, you can give them fast feedback through a quick sticker. You can type feedback. Whatever you want to say, make sure you highlight paragraph 2. Whatever you want to say, you can use the little feedback stickers or the feedback post-its. We've also have custom comments that we've preloaded that you can also preload, that you can add to, and that way you can also add comments real fast too. Because I know as an educator, I sometimes say the same thing over and over and over again. Like if I had $1 for every time I say, source your document or where's your citation, I probably could be retired in some really tropical island by now, right? So anything you feel like you say over and over, you can preload into your custom comments just to make your life easier. And then we have this little floating toolbar. You can mark this kid off. This is just an organizational tool, and you can move on to the next kid, right? And so on. So as the student, I'm going to log back out and log back in as that trial student. If I can remember what I logged in with. I think that was it. Okay. And as the student, there's that feedback right then and there. So again, really, really powerful way for you to communicate feedback, anything like that with your kids while they're working with you synchronously or asynchronously. With that in mind, I want to just make sure, just to remind you, that we looked at 4 tools today, and these are the 4 tools that I highly, highly, highly recommend when you are that you really use quite a bit when you're teaching remotely to help you with DBQ implementation. Use that customized tool to shorten your assignments up, right? Maybe the first time they log in, they do just a very quick activity, or the first DBQ they do, they just look at a couple of sources. So customize. Use that audio. Provide additional directions, hints, all that through the instructor markup tool. And use that manage button to provide feedback to your kids in a timely fashion, but also just to make sure they know that you're there. Sometimes that's, again, really important, not in a threatening way, but to know that their teacher is there, they're watching, they're there to help, that kind of thing. So again, that is the manage button on your teacher assignment dashboard. So every assignment that you create, there is a manage button. As I mentioned, that manage button also allows you to look at the student essay, and there are some custom comments again. So what I'm going to do, I've been talking for a little while. I'm going to show you a quick clip. This will be one of the last videos I show you on what this manage button looks like if you are doing the essay as well.
Hey there. In this video, Rebecca and I are going to demonstrate how to use our dynamic interactive feedback tools. Whether you're home grading, working in a distance learning situation, or you're in class, we think they'll be a big help.
Okay, so to start, you'll see we have two kinds of feedback: unit feedback and essay feedback.
The unit feedback focuses on students' work leading up to, but not including the essay. Their reading of the background essay, their document analyses, their bucketing and chicken footing, and their outlining. The essay feedback button only views and allows you to comment on the final essay.
You'll see that we've preloaded a bunch of comments. You can remove these, you can edit and rewrite them, or you can add and save your own comments.
This way, you don't have to retype the same comment every time it arises.
We've also preloaded stickers. When your students have completed a step and you're ready to provide feedback, go to your class. Find the assignment and click on Manage.
That puts you in the Manage page. You'll see the assignment title, the number of students, and down here, each student listed individually. For her Texas history class, Ms. Beltran has assigned a unit on Sam Houston. Right away, she wants to see how well her students understand the background essay and the driving question that they'll be answering.
She starts with her student Ani, clicking on View Unit and then the background essay page. Responding to Ani's work, she can now type her own comments, use the preloaded custom comments, and attach stickers as she sees fit.
When Ms. Beltran is ready to move on to another student, she clicks on Next Student here, or by clicking on a particular student. Either way, she is taken to the same page in the next student's unit. In this way, a teacher can give feedback and view every student's background essay pages, for example, or their document A analysis.
This is especially helpful if a teacher is assessing a particular skill like map reading or dealing with point of view and sourcing.
On the student's end, Ani can click View and see if her teacher has provided feedback. She cannot delete or even move Ms. Beltran's comments, but she can turn off her teacher's feedback and then turn it back on again. So for Ani and all of her students, Ms. Beltran can provide feedback throughout the unit with the background essay and the document analyses. And if she has included our essay builder in her initial assignment setup, she can also follow students as they work from tab to tab, from bucketing to chicken footing, extracting evidence, and outlining their essays.
On the Manage page, when the button is orange...
Wait, that's red. That's totally red.
Anyway, when it's not blue, it means a student or students have turned in their essay draft. Clicking on it, she scrolls down and sees who has submitted a draft and when.
This empty blue circle here indicates that their essays need feedback. When she clicks on the orange View Essay button, she is automatically in essay feedback mode. The commenting tools on the essay are a bit different from the rest of the unit.
To add a comment, Ms. Beltran first has to select a passage, a word, a phrase, a sentence, a paragraph. Then she clicks Add Comment, and a comment box opens up on the right.
She can either type her comment or use one of the preloaded comments. Either way, these can be color-coded. Ms. Beltran likes to give each comment its own color to help students more easily track them. When she's done commenting on a student's draft, she can either click Feedback Complete or Send to Student. With the first, the students won't get her feedback until Ms. Beltran goes to the Manage page and clicks Send All Essay Feedback. Doing it this way allows Ms. Beltran to return her feedback to all of her students at the same time.
Down here, she can see whether and when she has provided feedback.
This allows her to collect a student's essay.
This, that a student needs feedback.
And this, that feedback has been given.
These get updated with each round of revisions and feedback.
Up here, she can export all of the essays, letting her grade them in Canvas, Schoology, Google Classroom, or whatever learning platform her school uses. With this, she can collect all the essays at one time. Here, she can send all essay feedback at once.
And right here, she can close the assignment, which turns off the ability for students to be able to send more essays. To reopen the assignment, she can still click Open next to each student's name.
Let's take a look at another student's essay. This is Sophie's first draft, and Ms. Beltran wants to give her feedback so Sophie can make revisions before submitting the essay for her final grade. After highlighting a word or passage, Ms. Beltran clicks Add Comment, using our preloaded comments or simply typing something here. When she finishes giving Sophie feedback, she clicks here or here and moves on to another student.
But let's say Ms. Beltran wants Sophie to go back and give the document a closer look.
To do that, she goes down here to the taskbar and clicks on Unit Feedback.
After adding a comment, she can easily return to the essay.
A couple things to note. After you've sent feedback and you're waiting for a student to revise her essay, you're not going to be able to add comments to the prior version. When you try to highlight a section, like I'm doing here, no comment box appears.
You have to wait for the student to revise her essay and then click over to version 2. And here you can make comments.
The second thing to note is that whatever version you're in, or even if you're in the rubric, clicking on a student's name here in the floating drop-down box doesn't mean or do anything. This is just a checklist.
However, you can use this list to scroll down and click over to another student.
Returning to the assignment page, she can again see where the work stands for the whole class. So some of her students have received feedback. For others, Ms. Beltran has provided feedback but not sent it, so she clicks here and those blue buttons turn orange. If she hasn't given a student feedback, maybe she has forgotten or the student has been absent, she'll see this empty circle. On Sophie's end,
so I'm going to go ahead and stop it there. This is one video, again, that you'll have access to on our online platform in the PD's video section. But I wanted to make sure that you knew how easy it was for you to ask a student to make a minor change to get a better grade and send it back to you, that second draft, to kind of grade again. I think, again, in this particular environment, the more opportunities that we can give students to be successful, the better. And what's really nice is they don't have to retype their essay or redo everything. They just fix that one section and send it right back to you for a second round of grading. So ladies and gentlemen, that is a wrap for looking at DBQ Online. And I showed you guys a model lesson. So what I want to encourage you to do is think about the following things when you, excuse me, I'm going to not show you that. I want you to think about the following things as you plan for your first lesson. Maybe the first time they log into DBQ Online, you don't have a whole lesson. Maybe it's just a page just to get them on the platform, just to get them familiar with the annotation tools. But for your first DBQ, your first lesson, make sure, again, your class has been created. Consider, again, how you share that class code. But think about the actual length of the lesson. You don't have to do this big DBQ that I showed you. You could make it 2 documents, right? You could make it much more manageable. Maybe instead of the essay, again, you have them do a discussion board, or you have them do a quick write or a flip grid, that kind of thing.
Absolutely great ideas there, Imali. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we really appreciate you going over this vast resource with us.
No problem. And just a couple of other little tips too, again, additional markups, all those things. And I just want to just say one more thing before I hand you guys over back to your JCPS team. Remember, again, on our online platform, we have tons of other resources, including, again, those PD videos. And I don't think I showed you this, but on our online platform, on the very bottom, you can register for one of our daily webinars. So if you want just, another live person to walk you through anything, we have daily webinars. And we also have a support section that has screencasts for all sorts of things, whether it's the annotation tools, FAQs, and if there's, again, any issues, you can always contact our support. But I want to mention again that our direct email to our IT team is support@DBQ Project as well.
Excellent. All right. Does anybody have anything else before we talk about what's coming up next on the channel?
Yeah, I just want to, again, thank you to Imali and to Chip from DBQ. I know Chip's not here, but he's been supporting on the back end of this. Once again, I think that the biggest thing that's going to come from our virtual understanding is how do we go about doing something now that will help us return to the brick and mortar setting as well, right? If we can do something in both settings, then that's going to prepare us for whatever might come in the future. DBQ Project is one of those features that provides a virtual option as well as a binder option. And we've been fortunate enough to be able to provide through Title I and Title II monies, DBQ binders to the majority of folks. And there's not many products out there that I really endorse in a way because it so oftentimes misses the mark when it comes to inquiry. DBQ is one of those. And so I would say this is one that we're going to lean into on the district level, that we recommend on a school by school level that you guys lean into too as well. So thank you very much for Imali, and please, Rebecca, take it away because you're going to be talking about next steps for us when it comes to the PD.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. First of all, thank you to Imali and the great support that she's been able to give us and that she is going to be giving us. So we've got some great things coming up. We're going to be publishing those on our upcoming PD page and sharing those out in our newsletter. So if you haven't registered for that, please go to our website to register for the newsletter and check out the section of the upcoming PD page as well. We're going to be working on setting up some dates and times for future professional learning to dig into the 6-step method a lot more and to see how it can help support inquiry and building those student skills, as well as providing some office hours as we get into this, as we use these, that they can that teachers can come and ask questions and just kind of have some thought partners to help implement DBQ. So we're looking forward to seeing teachers and using this platform to help advance the skills and move students towards inquiry and argumentation.
All right, excellent. Well, thank you guys for joining us today. Let's take a look at our schedule. This afternoon, we have the middle school science Savas episode. So that's coming up at 12:30, and that's with Jackie Walton, Lacey Eccles, Charlotte Ivy, Jim Unger, and Kelly Posruck. All right, so excellent. We'll see you next time, and hopefully at 12:30. So bye, guys.